Why are some atheists so afraid of changing their mind? You know, one of the things that I have noticed over 2 years of doing these short answer videos is often no sooner have we put them up on Facebook than we get some, and I stress some, very angry, vitriolic members of the secular community posting sort of angry little sound bites underneath them. And those responses have a number of things in common. Often they are just sound bites, just some sort of atheist soundbite they've grabbed off Twitter and parroted, often sort of single line rude remarks, often with bad grammar and a lack of punctuation, or often there'll be a sort of pushback where the person clearly hasn't even responded to, hasn't even watched the video in question. In fact, I got so frustrated about this behaviour, I actually wrote a much longer piece that's linked to in the show notes called How to Avoid Being a Village Atheist. But I began to reflect on the behaviour and what drives it. And it occurs to me that for some, just some atheists, and maybe some of you watching this fall into this category, there is almost a sort of fear that they might be wrong. And they can't even bring themselves to engage with the best arguments for the other side. And so the best way to keep God at a distance is to shout and protest and hurl mud. It's a bit like sort of monkeys hurling poo around in the jungle. Anything to just not even consider that my position might be false. And of course that leads to a whole number of problems. If you don't put your beliefs to the test, this goes for Christians as well as atheists, you can't really know that they're ultimately true. And I think one of the most challenging things you can do as an atheist is really properly, truly investigate the claims of the Christian faith. But you know, if you do that, something might happen, and I think there can be the fears of that. You know, one of my friends is a gentleman called Alistair McGrath. He's an Oxford professor, has written many books, and has written many books actually responding to the claims of atheism. And Alistair once told me an unusual story. He had received an email from somebody who'd read one of his books and been very moved by it, and actually had given his life to Christ and become a Christian. But the story of how he'd done so was quite unusual. This Oxford student had been quite a committed atheist, had spent a lot of his time reading atheist books and literature, books by people like Richard Dawkins and others. But then it began to occur to him, because he was a student and had been taught how to think critically, that he had, as he put it, only read one side of the argument. And it occurred to him he really ought to read the other side of the argument. And as he began reading the very best Christian philosophers and Christian books he could get his hands on, including some of Alistair's, he suddenly began to realise that those claims of atheism that he had placed so much weight in did not actually stack up. They sort of turned to dust, as he put it, in his hands. And as he had the courage to follow that line of evidence where it led, it eventually led to him concluding that the claims of Jesus were true, that the Christian faith was true, and he bowed the knee and became a follower of Jesus. My challenge to you, if you are an atheist watching this or a secular person watching this, you are very welcome. We design these videos to be accessible. We would love you to go out and watch more of our short answer videos and not respond with angry comments, but engage with them. If I or my colleagues say something you disagree with, raise that in the comments. We're happy to have substantive discussions. Or take it one stage further. Challenge yourself to actually read a book written by a Christian academic who knows what he or she is talking about. One of the best I can recommend that's come out in the last couple of years is the book Confronting Christianity, written by Rebecca McLaughlin, who is an absolutely brilliant British academic now living in the States. You can find it wherever books are sold. Challenge yourself to read it with the same openness that you would read a piece of atheist literature, and weigh the evidence. And if the evidence seems to point more to the Christian faith, have the courage to follow your convictions. That can take courage. So especially if your friends around you are your peer group and they're sort of telling you, no, you should be rude to Christians, don't take the arguments seriously. Have the courage to follow your convictions. Because I have every respect for an atheist who has weighed the arguments and hasn't come to the conclusion that they're true. I have very little respect for somebody who's not willing to engage in the first place, because that simply shows fear, not maturity. I think Christianity is the greatest news on the planet. I think the evidence stands up. But don't take my word for it. Put it to the test, do the hard work, and be willing to follow it where it leads.